Welcome to the Believe in Texans podcast, alongside former Houston Texans wide receiver, 6-year NFL veteran Cecil Shorts III. I am Patrick Creighton, host of Area 45 on your flagship home for the Houston Texans Sports Radio 610. And Cecil, we had football last night.
Yeah, buddy.
We had football last night. It is the last time. Actually, it's the first time in what is going to be many Thursdays in a row with football. For the next 4 months, we are going to have football on Thursday every single night. That is a glorious thing.
Mm.
Your Texans and the Bears in the Hall of Fame game. And yeah, there were not exactly a whole lot of what you would call starters
Yeah.
playing in this game. But I feel like, for preseason games, I don't think any of us are all worried about, I don't think CJ Stroud is suddenly going to turn into Daniel Jones. I don't think Joe Mixon is going to forget how to run the football. I don't think Nico Collins or Stephon Diggs are suddenly going to get a case of the dropsies. It's the younger guys who are your twos, your rookies, your guys who come back from injury. These are the guys that I'm more interested in watching and learning about because, look, one thing about the NFL, it's always next man up. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of next man up over 17 games. So your team's ability to have guys who come off the bench, guys who maybe normally play special teams, and then can get out on the field and produce for you in regular situations is often the difference between your season going really well and your season going straight to hell. And we don't want the season to go straight to hell. I know that's a foreign concept, this idea of not wanting things to go badly. But believe it or not, we want things to go well.
Mm-hmm.
So let's take a look at what was an abbreviated game last night as Mother Nature decided that we weren't going to get a full 60 minutes of football. This game was
Right.
called in the third quarter as the lightning struck and it came down fast and furious until finally there was no more time to wait. So from last night's game, Cecil, what were some things that stood out to you most for the Houston Texans from the game last night?
You know what? This might catch people off guard, but the new kickoff rule stood out to me first and foremost. Obviously, because it's the first play of the game, right? It's totally different. It hasn't been seen in NFL before, so all eyes were on it, and I absolutely love it for Damian Pierce. And I'm gonna tell you why. Because Damien is going to hit that hole hard. I was watching it last night on both sides of the ball. And the rules are different, right? The ball's kicked. Nobody can move until basically the returner catches the ball or the ball hits the ground, right? So as soon as you hit that ball, it's like a zone scheme. It's like everybody's waiting to block five yards apart from each other. And once you see the hole, you got to be able to explode through it quickly. And I think how Damien runs, right? How Damien was ran his whole life, whether at Florida or high school, his first year in the NFL. He finds the hole and he hits it hard. That's what he's going to have to do on a kickoff return. And I think he can do really well in that sense of things. And it's another way to get a playmaker the ball, another way to build his confidence, another way to get him yards, another way to get him a touch. It can make an impact on the game. So that was the first thing that stood out to me. Might be something far fetched, but I just think that would be really good for him. I even seen last night, and I'm not sure if it was the Bears or the Texans, a guy come from one side and kind of pull to the other side, trying to get like a right return. He started on the left side and came all the way to the right side. I'm like, you can get creative with these things. So I'm interested to see how Frank Ross can get creative and get things going. But I really think it's going to be really good for Damian Pierce just to make an impact on the game. Somebody else, Aiden Hutchinson. I thought Hutch did a really good job yesterday catching the ball. Sorry, Xavier Hutchinson. I said Aiden. Aiden's the guy with Detroit Lions, I think.
He's the other Hutchinson.
But Xavier Hutchinson caught the ball well, got separation in his routes well. 5 catches, I think he had 5 targets. He made a play down the field, and then he was hard to bring down. And I think if he can continue to show, hey, I can make tough catches, he can be a guy that's on the roster 3 weeks from now. So he kind of made an impression on me. And then the last two I got, Blake Fisher. I thought Blake was really good at the point of contact. He's at left tackle for the first half. He played a lot of snaps. He did look a little tired at times, but that just comes with the territory, right? First game, you're nervous. First pro game, nothing to worry about. But his initial contact to that defensive end was exceptional. We do want to see him play a little bit lower. I do think he was high at times, but he moved well in the run game. He didn't. I don't think he let any sacks last night. There was a sack or two on a few of our quarterbacks, but I think he played a really good day for a really good night for his first ever football game. And then Kalen Bullock stood out to me as well. I was watching him specifically on defense because I'm like, all right, can he be ready to get in the game and make plays? And he played back deep in that middle third last night. And that's all they did. They played either cover three or man coverage the entire night, basically, because it's everything's bland in preseason. Plus, you play the Bears in what less than less than a month from now in
Yeah.
the
Week
regular
two.
season.
Week
You can't
two.
give anything away, right? You can't give anything away. But Bullock made some tackles. He made some plays. He broke on the ball some. He forced a fumble last night in the second quarter. He was showing up on film. That's what you want to see from a young guy. So I saw some things last night that made me excited for the younger guys on the Texans roster.
No, I'm with you. I'd love to see DP get some extra run maybe on kickoff returns. One of the things that we saw last night was it's going to take teams a little bit of time to adjust to that 5 yards of separation
Yeah.
and then trying to set up your blocks when you don't really have a whole lot of time to set up blocks, right? That's
Yeah.
that's the difference. Instead of guys flying down the field and they're coming at you real hard, but they got to run 50 yards. You've got time to set your blocks. Now, they're only 5 yards away, so they're not really full speed just quite yet. But they're only 5 yards away, and you can't like, okay, well, we're gonna set up this way, set up that way as you're setting up which directions you're trying to block. Well, you haven't had time to look down the field, see how guys are coming, see where they're running, what lanes they're in, and then say, okay, well, we got to see them. Let's create a seam here. Let's create a seam there. They got to kind of do this all right away. And a guy like Damian Pierce, who angry runner, right?
Yes,
Angry
yes,
runner.
yes.
That's a guy who, if I need my kick returner to say break a tackle before he can find a lane, I feel really good about DP breaking a tackle, being able to find a lane. And we saw last year he has enough speed to get it home. Right? He's not one of the guys who's going to gas out and then 20-yard line, all of a sudden, his speed decreases by 50% because he's out of wind. He can go that distance. He can run that 70, 80 yards. So I like the idea of having a guy as physical as he is,
Yes.
able to return some kicks. You mentioned Xavier Hutchinson. I really liked Hutch as a draft pick last year. 6'3", 210-pound receiver. I knew that look, there was some refinement they were going to have to work on with him. He was a little raw coming out of college, but the raw physical skills are there. And we saw a little bit of that last year where they used him as a receiver. They used him out of the backfield. They moved him in jet motion. They did some different things with him, and he's that kind of guy that you can be creative with stuff. And to see him, look, he got the most targets. He had 6 targets, 5 catches, 56 yards, and he had one for 20 yards, like you said. He got one downfield, and he's tough to bring down, as big as he is. And I don't know what it's like to be 6'3" because even wearing ice skates, I was not 6'3". So it's a little different, for those of us who are vertically challenged to be able to think about the idea of being a 6'3" guy. But I love the fact that he is as big as he is, and the speed, the toughness. And I think he was a guy that, looking at that wide receiver room this year and saying, okay, well, where are the guys who could maybe go from the outside to being in? The guys we talked about, we usually talk about John Mechie, something maybe come from the outside coming in. Xavier Hutchinson's a guy I think they could have been on the outside and force his way in. And look, there will be other players who are good players who are not going to make this team as a wide receiver because they've got a really good wide receiver room, and it's going to be a very tough competition. I thought it was really important for him to have that show last night. And then finally, you mentioned Kalen Bullock. D'Amico talked about Kalen Bullock today. Said he really liked the physicality. Got a forced fumble. Said he'd like him to take it a little easy on the celebrating and stick to the fumble. But, you know, you and I talked about in other episodes about the idea of having a 3 safety alignment. And then you've got, Jimmy Ward, and you got Jalen Petrie, and you got Kalen Bullock all going across, where you get into these dime packages, and you got 3 corners and 3 safeties on the field, and you're really fast. And if you can be physical as well as fast, considering how much the NFL is a passing league and how often teams are in 3 wide more than 60% of the time. And then there's times where they're in 4 wide, how many times they're in shotgun. And these are all passing formations that teams want to throw the ball. If you get a lead, they have to throw the ball. If you can play with that kind of speed and physicality, your defense is going to be really strong. I think Kalen Bullock playing as well as he did was a big part for them as well. Your thoughts on somebody who has been very maligned in the city of Houston for many years, Davis Mills. Davis Mills has gotten punched left, right, and center. Davis Mills looked all right last night. In fact, he might have even looked – he might have looked a little better than what we've seen from him. It seemed like maybe his base was a little bit wider. He has instituted the C.J. Stroud pump fake. And look, he was accurate. He's 10 of 13 for 102 and a touchdown. He moved the ball down the field.
Yeah. He looked really good. That first drive, a nice long drive. I'm not sure how many plays it was. But he looked comfortable in the pocket. He looked good throwing on the run. He was seeing his play. He was seeing his play. He was seeing the defense well, hitting the right holes. He was accurate. I felt like he looked like a number 2, a solid backup quarterback last night. And we talked about it before. We need him to be the solid number 2. Case is great, but I don't want to have to use Case, right? I think at this age, Case is there for more of the mentoring, more of the just the older guy in the room, the wisdom that he has. If he has to play, to me, that's the issue. Then what are we doing with Davis? What are we doing at number 2, right? So Davis last night looked like he could be a solid guy, and honestly, I expected him to. When you go out there, you've been a starter for X amount of games, more than 10 games. In the preseason, you should look good, especially in the Hall of Fame game, the very first game where there's going to be a lot of young guys out there. And I thought he looked very well. He moved the ball well, commanded the offense, in and out the huddle, no pre-snap, not many pre-snap penalties when he was in the game at all. So that's a huge statement for a first game early, right in the Hall of Fame type of situation. So he looked really good last night.
It's important for Davis to play well. Last year when CJ missed a couple of games, they turned to Case. And that was a very indicting decision on what the team thought about Davis Mills in that moment. And this, to me, is a year he's got to show he can be a legitimate backup quarterback, or he's not going to be here next year. And he's going to struggle to find on with somebody else because, well, if you can't be the number 2 in Houston, well, why can you be the number 2 here?
Yeah.
So I think it's a very important preseason for Davis Mills. He's got to be able to show that the team can trust him if he needs to play, whether it's a half, whether it's a game, whether it's 2 or 3 games. He has to show them he's a trustworthy player. And this is, game like last night. Look, I get it. You're playing against 2s and 3s and wannabes, but you're also playing with the 2s and 3s and wannabes. Yes. And if you can't be a 2 being better than the other guys 2, then how can I trust you to match up with a 1? It's a ladder, right? You got to climb the ladder. You got to earn your way no matter what business you're in. You got to start the bottom. You got to work here, work there, work here. You got to show, all right, I can beat these guys at this level. I can beat these guys at this level before I'm going to get a shot here. So also thought it was important for him to play well. Cecil, let's talk about the offensive line. You mentioned, that the right tackle, with Blake going out there and playing pretty well. Kenyon Green, Juice Scruggs, these are guys who essentially are going to play their second year, right? Juice, a second-year player. Kenyon's a third-year player who missed all of last season, so essentially his second year that he's actually going to play. What did you think of them? D'Amico had said he liked what he saw from them as far as physicality, that they're finishing their blocks, but he specifically mentioned Kenyon Green. getting to the second level
Mhm.
and executing blocks. What did you see from Kenyon Green, from Juice Scruggs, maybe that stood out to you in that first game?
It was the whole left side of the line from 70, who was the center, Juice Shrugs, onto the sideline to it was 70, and then like you mentioned, Kenyon Green, and then Blake Fisher. They looked good last night. They look good. The biggest thing for me early on, there's no pre-snap penalties from the offensive line, and there was no holdings. There was no illegal blocks. They were in cahoots. They were on the same page. They moved the ball well. They were good on the running game. They really did a good job, especially Kenyon Green, like D'Amico said, getting to that second level and then being physical at the second level. It's different getting there and the guy runs by you, or getting there and then not making a play. He got to the second level and he was putting hands on people and finishing his blocks. And as the game went on, he got more comfortable and more comfortable. You see the same thing from Blake Fisher. Those guys looked good last night. Now they got to continue to look good, right? This is just one game, and they'll probably play a whole nother game and another game. They'll probably get a lot of reps, I'm saying, the next couple games. But those three impressed me last night, but they have to continue to ascend. That's the biggest thing about the NFL. You can't just have one game on and the next game you got to fall off. Continue to ascend, continue to get those reps, do the most you can with those. But that's what we need from Kenyon Green. We need him to get the reps. We need him to get confident, because coming out as a 15th overall pick from A&M, we expected him to be a nasty guard. So we can see more of last night, and against top competition as we go along. I think we'll be a happy some happy Texans fans in the building for sure.
Kenyon Green being able to develop and be the kind of player that they obviously expected when they took him 15th overall. That's a big, big difference for this team from last year, when left guard was a revolving door
Yeah.
for most of the year. Really, center was a revolving door. I mean, they went through 5 centers. So if Juice Scruggs, who they took in the second round last year, that guy can be, your legitimate anchor at center. You add 2 really good players to an offensive line, and a line that struggled frequently last year in run blocking, and was occasionally inconsistent in pass blocking, and also picked up a lot of pre-snap penalties. You know,
Hmm.
if you're able to correct those 3 things, that becomes essentially. I feel like if you are eliminating those 3 things, you're a top third line,
Agreed.
right? You are part of that, say, let's say top 10 or 11 offensive lines in the league. If you are just getting better at run, if you're just league average run blocking, if you are doing a good job protecting your quarterback, because CJ knows how to get rid of it and knows how to buy time, and if you just eliminate the majority of all those pre-snap penalties, how much better this offense will function.
Hmm.
Uh, Last one I want to ask you about, because he's had a really strong camp, and he's showed up, and he's played fast, and he has made quick decisions, and he has been really impressive in camp, but he was kind of MIA last night, is John Mechie. Mechie didn't get a whole lot of looks. He had 2 targets the whole game. He had 1 catch for 4 yards. Certainly thought that, this would be an opportunity for Mechie to shine a little bit. And instead it was Xavier Hutchinson, it was Ben Skoranek who were getting the shine.
They
And
look good.
John Mechie seemed to struggle to convert everything he was doing in practice into the
Hmm.
game last night. You were receiver for like pretty much your whole life. So what did you see from John Mechie? Did you feel that it was something schematic? Was it something with him? Because he really was not a factor in this game last night.
In my humble opinion, I think he let the game speed him up. So if you watch him in practice, you see the highlights in practice. He's running at his own pace. He knows his route. He knows responsibility. He knows where to line up, and he runs his route and finishes it and runs it well. In the game last night, it seemed like he was cutting early. He wasn't stepping on the defensive back's toes. Just some technique issues that if he does these things, he gets open or catches the ball. For example, third down last night, they threw a slant to him on the left side. He is a fast dude. If he attacks this cornerback who's playing man coverage on him, if he just attacks him and steps on his toes, that DB has to open up, and then he cuts. It's a catch for a first down. Probably catching the tackle, but a first down. He cuts early. not using his speed. And it's not because he can't do it. We see him do it in camp all the time. But he let the game speed him up. And that's hard for a young player. Don't let the game speed you up. Play how you normally play. The way you practice is how you play. Don't let it speed you up. So, with that being said, I think he lined up correctly. He knew his assignments. I think he did create some separation as the night went on. But when he got his targets, he didn't make the most of them. He has to continue to not let the game speed him up. As a receiver, it's hard. But if he wants to get on this field and if he wants to be an impact player, it can't just be in practice. So he has to show up in this preseason. And he played a lot. Played, I'm gonna say, the whole first half almost, and a little bit in the third quarter. He really has to get things going. Don't let the game speed you up. Make the plays when they come your way. You're a playmaker. You know what to do, but you got to go out there and do it when the lights are on.
Is that something you'd say maybe he's just a little too overamped, a little too juiced, makes him
Too
think
excited.
about it a little too much?
Just too excited. Just too excited. On that slant route, if he takes one more step or just attacks him a little bit more vertically, that DB literally opens up, then you cut, right? So he just got excited. I think it's the first game jitters. I expect him to really play well the next couple games. He's going to get the reps. So I expect him to really play well the next couple games because we see in camp, I mean, you've seen it, Pat. He looks dynamite out there. And I'll say this too. For a young receiver, lining up correctly and creating separation is the biggest thing. He did that last night in most cases. It's just when the ball came his way, he has to make sure he's not rushing it, getting overexcited. Because as a receiver, you know when you got a chance to get the ball, right? You know when that ball's coming your way. When it's a slant route, you knew it was coming. He sees it. He look coming line of scrimmage. He's looking around. His man coverage. I got to beat my guy. Okay, beat your guy how you normally do. Don't rush the process. Just trust it.
No, and look, he has looked tremendous in
Hmm.
camp so far. And I don't think he's a guy that's really in danger of not making the roster unless just something unforeseeable were to happen.
Right.
We know the talent is there. We know the ability is there. Like you said, first game jitters. He's got to just kind of get back within himself,
Hmm.
repeat what he does in practice. And the next preseason game comes up against the Steelers, and you see him make a little bit of those adjustments, and it can be a very different game for him. And
Yeah.
I think that's really what D'Amico's looking for. He's not worried. Okay, you struggled a little bit in this game. Show me how you bounce back. Show me how you recover. Show me
Yeah.
how you make the adjustments to the next game. And I think that is the most important thing for John Mechie in the eyes of his head coach.
Absolutely, absolutely. How do you bounce back from your not so good performance, right? Or you're not your best performance. I wouldn't say it's a bad performance, but we only get a couple of targets and you only get one catch, that kind of stands out, right? So how can you bounce back? Because there may be a situation where we need you to be the number three receiver this week. That be a situation where you drop a pass in a game, right? How are you gonna mentally get back into it? So I'm excited to see what he can do against Pittsburgh and how he bounce back as his overall performance.
He is former Texans wide receiver, 6-year NFL veteran Cecil Shorts III. I'm Patrick Creighton, the host of Area 45 on Sports Radio 610, your home for the Houston Texans. That's a cool quick recap here for you from their first preseason game, the Hall of Fame game. Texans and the Bears played that last night. We're back next week with a couple more episodes of the Believe in Texans podcast. Make sure you like and subscribe to the Believe in Texans podcast wherever you get your podcasts, whether you get them on Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else. Make sure you're getting us with the Believe in Texans podcast. Cecil, always great to talk with you, my friend. We'll be back early next week with some more, all of the lowdown, all the breakdown, all the inside info on your Houston Texans. We'll see you next week. Go Texans!